Good evening. You're watching the News at 6 with me, Sean Russell. The News at 6 is all about the day's biggest developing stories. And one of the big developments that happened today, well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on his way back from his three-nation tour. So we'll be talking about that visit as far as the Prime Ministers to these three nations go, to a special guest as well. But over the next half hour, we'll be filling you in on the biggest stories that have happened in India and around the world. But first, the headlines. Prime Minister wraps up three-nation tour to France, Germany and Canada. Analysts count among successes, key deals and his pitch for Make in India. Separatist leader Masarat Alam rearrested in Kashmir. Protests break out in many places as demonstrators clashed with the police. Congress finalizes strategy for protests against land ordinance. Rahul Gandhi to meet farmer delegations from different states tomorrow. A top story this evening, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has concluded his three-nation, 9-day tour of France, Germany and Canada. Modi's visit is being seen as extremely successful for India as he struck deals, ensured ease of doing business in India to global leaders and achieved key goals.
On the eve of his departure from Canada, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said he hoped the two countries would maintain the close relationship in the future. At a dinner reception hosted by his Canadian counterpart, Modi also said his visit to the North American country was not only significant as the first by an Indian Prime Minister in 42 years, but because of how the visit had rejuvenated ties between the two countries.
ये यात्रा को मैं कई तरह से सफल मानता हूं। भारत और कनाडा के बीच इतना सब कुछ होते हुए भी वे एक दूसरे के ध्यान से हट गए थे। नहीं मिलने से यह स्वाभाविक भी था। अब मुझे विश्वास है कि हम एक दूसरे के ध्यान में ही नहीं, प्रयासों में भी साथ-साथ रहेंगे, साथ-साथ चलेंगे, साथ-साथ पाएंगे।
Modi also expressed hope that a bilateral investment promotion and protection agreement and comprehensive economic partnership agreement between the two countries would happen soon. His counterpart Stephen Harper, on the other hand, stressed on the contribution made by the Indo-Canadian community, declaring that Canada would always stand by India.
Make no mistake, the government of Canada and Canadians overwhelmingly support and will always stand by the unity and the strength of India in the world.
Earlier, Modi and Harper visited a Gurdwara in Vancouver. Both leaders were gifted Sikh ceremonial swords as a memento. Modi hailed the Sikh community in Canada, while Harper also acknowledged the contribution of the Sikhs to the Canadian economy and culture. The two leaders also offered prayers at a temple. A large number of expatriate Indians thronged the temple to get a glimpse of the leaders.
सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कहा है, हिंदू धर्म ये कोई रिलीजन नहीं है, ये कोई पूजा पद्धति का नाम नहीं है। सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कहा है, इट्स अ वे ऑफ लाइफ।
Modi's tour of the three countries is being seen as extremely successful. The primary aim of this tour was to seek investments for the ambitious Make in India program that promises to generate employment and revenue for the economy. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And to help us understand the Prime Minister's visit better and the outcomes, we have with us Pramit Paul Chaudhary, Foreign Affairs Editor of the Hindustan Times newspaper. Thank you very much, Pramit, for coming into our studios. So very quickly, first of all, this Link West visit by the Prime Minister, how do you rate it? A lot has happened, three different countries and three very different agendas. So what would you talk about as the defining objectives of this visit?
Well, I think for him, the overall gain for Indian foreign policy is that Modi has now, having done the big three, Japan, China, and will be doing China again next month in the United States, is now looking at the sort of tier 2 nations, many of which we have neglected. And so the fact, for example, Canada, the first time an Indian Prime Minister has gone on a solely bilateral visit in over 4 decades, is an example. So these tier 2 countries, if you wish, all have niche areas which are very important to India, especially as given Modi's economic agenda and his interest in the Indian diaspora. So you saw he goes to Germany. Germany is a manufacturing superpower. It manufactures and exports more than the United States, for example. Only Japan and China are on the same league. For a person who believes in reviving the manufacturing sector of India, Germany is absolutely essential. France, as you know, is one of our key defense partners on the Rafale deal, which has been going on and on forever. It was important that we somehow brought that to a conclusion one way or the other, because a huge hole was developing in our defense sector as a consequence. And Canada, which is one of the biggest natural resource nations, exporters of the world, it is our primary provider, for example, of dal. It's often not known that Canada is the world's largest exporter of dal, and we are the world's largest buyer. So there's an obvious and has been a long-standing relationship there. And the Indian diaspora there is one of the fastest growing. Canada, by 2030, by its own census projections, Indians will be the single largest minority in that country. But it's a country that we have completely done very little with for, as I said, for 4 decades. So I think Modi is correctly going to these smaller countries, if you wish, at least by the standards of the big three, and saying that, look, each of you are important to my economic agenda or have a certain role to play within the larger fabric of Indian foreign policy. And so he's filling in these holes one by one, and there are some other countries still that he needs to visit at some point, notably Britain and, let's say, Israel, for example, over the next year and a half. But he's filling those holes in, and I think that's a good thing for him to do.
Right. Also, let's talk about the fact that it's a very personal stamp that he's leaving as far as on foreign policy is concerned. But, I mean, he's very hands-on as the Prime Minister in terms of foreign policy, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, what was striking in his first 6 months in office, when he went to a number of these first set summits and so on, from what we understand is that one of the things he insisted with the foreign ministry is that I just don't want to have nice words, which is a very common practice in diplomacy. You can generate huge amounts of words in any nice trip. He says, I have an economic agenda here. I have other agendas regarding what I want to accomplish in India. I want the foreign policy of the country to be tightly interwoven into those agenda. So, for example, if he goes to Japan, he says, how much money are you going to put on the table? How are you, as Japan, going to help me revive manufacturing in India? What can you do about the infrastructure development of my country? And there's a lot of specific, the joint statement and annexes, for example, of the Japan one goes through everything: natural gas, clean coal, all of these little bits and things that were stuck together. Even with the United States, a country that doesn't have as much to contribute to manufacturing because it's more of a service economy and is much further away than Japan is, and it's a country that he's had a bit of a history with regarding his visa problems with them. Even there, the economic agenda is very tightly woven into the joint statement. That you can provide technology, you can provide finance, there's all areas of defense that we can work on. And so he brings that into the joint statement. Yeah, there's a little bit in democracy, that's the traditional stuff, but it's really about tangibles. And so even when he goes to a country like Canada, he says, I'm coming, but I need something big on the table that I can say I did accomplish that helps my economy. So you had a big uranium deal, which is both symbolic and substantially important for India. Same with Germany and of course in France. So he has carefully pushed the foreign policy of the country into one that's really about what can you deliver for me immediately over the next 2 or 3 years and help revive the Indian economy, and even in some cases, for example, help my social agenda, whether it's Swachh Bharat or financial inclusion.
All right, Pal Chaudhary, we'll leave it over there, but thank you very much for coming in and helping us understand the Prime Minister's visits to the 3 nations a little better. Thanks so much. Well, moving on to the Congress, where back after his sabbatical, Rahul Gandhi will be meeting delegations of farmers from different states tomorrow. The meeting will be held a day before the Congress's rally on Sunday to galvanize protests against the land ordinance. The delegation will include farmers from Bhattaparsal village, from where Rahul had launched a Padyatra in 2010 against forcible land acquisition.
After a 2-month-long break, Congress Vice President Rahul Gandhi is now all set to take party's charge. He'll be meeting delegations of farmers ahead of Congress's mega rally on Sunday at the Ramlila Maidan in Delhi to intensify its protest against the land ordinance reissued last month. Rahul went on leave on 22nd of February, a day before the crucial budget session started. This was the period when the NDA government faced stiff opposition to its proposed new land acquisition law in the parliament, forcing it to make amendments.
He has today taken a review of his office because he is the Vice President of the party. He has been away for a while. From tomorrow he starts meeting with the leaders and representatives of the farmers from Delhi, adjoining areas, and the states of Haryana, Western UP, Rajasthan, Punjab.
He brought the land acquisition bill in 2013. He himself has told, the previous it was a special economic zone. In the name of special economic zone, people are making real estate business. After that only Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi thinking to benefit of the farmers, we brought that bill. Now they are making against the farmers because there is anti-farmers, the NDA government. Definitely my leader will talk tomorrow in a Ramlila Maidan and at the same time in Parliament also.
The rally also assumes significance as it being held on the eve of the opening of the second phase of the budget session of Parliament and at a time when the government has repromulgated the land acquisition ordinance.
जो एनडीए सरकार में और भारतीय जनता पार्टी सरकार में किसानों का भूमि अधिग्रहण अधिनियम के अध्यादेश के माध्यम से हक छीना जा रहा है, उनकी जमीन जबरदस्ती ली जा रही है, किसानों में रोष है.
Congress also stepped up its criticism against Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Friday. The party took strong exception to the Prime Minister's apparent dig at Congress during his speech in Toronto on Thursday.
उन्होंने अपने से पहले की सब सरकारों को, विशेषकर पिछली यूपीए की सरकार को बदनाम करने की कोशिश की. देश के बाहर जाकर कभी भारत के किसी प्रधानमंत्री ने इस तरह की बात प्रतिपक्ष के बारे में नहीं की.
However, BJP claimed PM's effort to bring investment and jobs to India has caused a lot of heartburn in the opposition camp.
It is a classic case of grapes being sour. It is out of frustration that Congress is using all kind of unparliamentary, unsavory words for none other than the Prime Minister of this country. And Mr. Modi is working relentlessly to see to it that investment is drawn into this country, that employment is provided to thousands and lakhs of the unemployed youth of this country.
Meanwhile, there is a lot of interest over possible organizational changes expected in Congress. All eyes are on whether Rahul Gandhi will be elevated to replace his mother Sonia Gandhi at the helm, despite opposing views within the party. With inputs from Pranav Goswami, Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, time for a quick break right now, but coming up on the other side, Jayalalitha has gotten an extension in her bail in Acid's case from the Supreme Court. More on that on the other side.
छुट्टियों के बाद काम पर राहुल, कांग्रेस की बढ़ी चुनौतियां और जिम्मेदारी, पार्टी नेतृत्व पर फिर उठे सवाल. देखिए देश देशांतर, राहुल वापसी और चुनौतियां, आज रात 8:30 बजे.
Welcome back. You're watching the news at 6. Now, protests broke out in Kashmir Valley today, soon after the police arrested top separatist leader Masrat Alam. The incident also triggered a political slugfest on the sidelines, with various parties criticizing the state government for paving the way for an explosive situation. Masrat was booked under the Unlawful Activities Act for holding an anti-India rally on Wednesday, along with Hurriyat leader Saeed Ali Shah Gilani.
Barely a month after his controversial release from prison, Masrat Alam is back in jail. The separatist leader was booked for sedition, among other offences, for hoisting the Pakistani flag at a rally in Kashmir on Wednesday. Hurriyat leader Saeed Ali Shah Gilani was put under house arrest on Thursday for provocative actions at the same rally.
के पहले दिन ही एफआईआर लग गया था, देशद्रोह का एफआईआर लगा था. उसके ऊपर भी था, बाकी लोग भी थे जिन्होंने पाकिस्तानी नारे लगाए और झंडे फहराए हैं. और जब मौका मिला, जब हमने परिस्थितियां ठीक देखी, पे उनको उसको अरेस्ट किया है. और आने वाले वक्त में जो है ये क्लियर कट जो मैसेज है कि केंद्र में नरेंद्र भाई मोदी की सरकार और कोलिशन सरकार जो है जम्मू कश्मीर में इस प्रकार की गतिविधि को जो है बिल्कुल स्वीकार नहीं करेगी।
The ruling PDP denied taking the action against pressure from the centre. The party claimed it was just a procedural police decision.
So I think it is not about pressure that he is arrested. He is not arrested under a pressure. He is arrested under a procedure because there are charges framed against him in the Budgam police station. So I think police is taking and the law is taking its own course. It has nothing to do with the politics or from the Home Minister's pressure or the Chief Minister's pressure. He is being arrested by Jammu and Kashmir police under a due procedure and under a due course of law.
The centre is keeping a close watch on the situation, even as it maintains there will be zero tolerance to militancy and separatism.
Any fellow who has got a sympathy towards Pakistan is not acceptable. But there is a law. There are rules and regulations. You can't just simply do whatever you want. You have to follow the law. So law is taking its own course and government is very clear. We don't want anybody in our country to do an anti-national act.
But opposition parties are unconvinced. Many leaders say the action against Alam is too little, too late.
दोनों को किन धाराओं के तहत गिरफ्तार किया गया है, ये जम्मू कश्मीर सरकार को बताना चाहिए.
The arrests were followed by a backlash in Kashmir. Protests erupted in various places with separatist groups clashing with the police. Masarat Alam is the chairman of the J&K Muslim League, which is a constituent of the hardline Hurid conference led by Gilani. He was convicted for organizing the anti-India protests in 2010 when 112 people were killed in stone pelting across the valley. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
The Supreme Court today extended bail of former Tamil Nadu Chief Minister and AIADMK Chief Jayalalitha till the 12th of May. Jayalalitha will remain on bail until the Karnataka High Court decides on her disposal of her appeal against conviction. The Supreme Court directed the Karnataka High Court to hold daily hearings to dispose of Jayalalitha's appeal against her conviction last year in the disproportionate assets case. And a Supreme Court bench also gave liberty to the High Court judge to move application in future for extension of time for delivering the judgment in view of the fact that a matter connected to the case is pending in the apex court before a larger bench. Jayalalitha was sentenced to a 4-year jail term in an 18-year-old corruption case.
The Lordship has stated that bail would be extended till the disposal of the appeal pending before Karnataka High Court, as well as in reference has been made to the constitution of larger bench with regard to the another matter. Finally, extension has been given up to 12th of May.
Well, time now for all the other national stories nationwide. The Supreme Court has put on hold 2 defamation cases against Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal today. The Apex Court also issued notice to the centre on Kejriwal's petition that there should be no criminal action in defamation proceedings. One of the cases was filed by Union Transport Minister Nitin Gadkari, accusing Kejriwal of linking him to corruption. The Madhya Pradesh High Court today passed stay orders on an FIR against the state governor Ram Naresh Yadav in the MP Professional Examinations Board scam. The bench reserved the details of the order in the case while hearing the petition filed by the governor. Ram Naresh Yadav had pleaded that the criminal proceedings cannot be initiated against the president and governor. Well, some international news now. Amid a growing humanitarian crisis, the Yemens Vice President has called for a comprehensive ceasefire. He stressed that a ceasefire will be one of the key preconditions to begin talks to end the fighting. Over 120,000 people have so far fled the country since the Saudi-led airstrikes began targeting Houthi rebels.
The crisis in Yemen is boiling over. The Houthi rebels are opening new fronts to counter airstrikes by the Saudis. Their supporters held rallies in Yemen protesting against United Nations resolution on arms embargo. But there is no let-up in the Saudi-led airstrikes that started 2 weeks back.
خلال 24 ساعة كان في عمليات مستمرة وكان في دعم بالطيران. الأوضاع الآن داخل تعز مستقرة، ولكن كما أكدت لك من أول أختي أنه هذه العناصر تتواجد داخل المدن السكانية.
Over 120,000 people have fled the country since the crisis began. Despite Red Cross aid trickling in, Yemeni capital Sana'a is low on medical supply and fuel.
الصحة العامة والسكان في الجمهورية اليمنية تطلق نداء استغاثة لإنقاذ عاجل الوضع الصحي من الانهيار الكامل الوشيك وتحذر من كارثة صحية ستحدث بسبب العجز الذي وصلت إليها المستشفيات.
Amid the growing crisis, Yemen's newly appointed Vice President proposed ceasefire to start talks to end the fighting.
الاجتياح على عدد المناطق وخاصة الاحتراب الموجود في عدن ونتحدث عن أي مبادرات طيبة ونوايا صادقة من أي طرف يجب أولا إيقاف آلة الحرب.
But Saudi Arabia has not responded to the offer made by Yemen. The Saudis had earlier rejected Iran's proposal to withdraw forces to start negotiations. Bureau Report, Sabha TV.
Now, Snap poll has declared opposition Labour leader Edward Miliband as the winner of the final TV debate of a knife-edge British election campaign. But the debate itself was oddly unbalanced as Prime Minister David Cameron chose not to take part. It was a risk that Miliband took as he appeared in the contest that pitted him against leaders of 4 smaller parties. Miliband properly saw it was an opportunity to showcase his own oft-questioned leadership credentials, and he was quick to highlight his missing rival. A poll published after the 90-minute debate suggested his gamble may have paid off, with 95% of a sample of people who had watched the debate judging Miliband the winner, with the Scottish nationalist leader Nicola Sturgeon second. However, some critics said the sample was biased towards Labour supporters.
I want to get rid of the Tories.
If you think this election is about leadership, then debate me one-on-one. I believe my ideas, my vision for the country is better for the working families of Britain. If you disagree, then prove it. Debate me and let the people decide.
Well, for all the other international news and updates, here's Global Buzz. Iraq released footage showing fresh airstrikes hitting Islamic State targets in the Ramadi. The strikes come after the IS militants overpowered several villages in the area on Wednesday. Ramadi is a stronghold of the Islamic State forces who've captured much of northern and western Iraq. Satellite images have shown that China is building an airstrip suitable for military use on a reef in the disputed water of South China Sea. China, however, reiterated that construction was conducted within its territory and called it legal. China's move has raised concern around the Asia-Pacific region, with the US and Philippines criticizing it. Former International Monetary Fund chief Rodrigo Rato was released from police custody early today. He was earlier arrested after Spanish authorities searched his home and office over suspected fraud and money laundering. He was released after cooperating with authorities who seized documents relevant to the investigation. Time for a quick break right now, but coming up on the other side, the International Paralympic Committee has de-recognized the Indian body for infighting and shoddy treatment to athletes. More on that on the other side.
छुट्टियों के बाद काम पर राहुल, कांग्रेस की बढ़ी चुनौतियां और जिम्मेदारी, पार्टी नेतृत्व पर फिर उठे सवाल। देखिए देश देशांतर, राहुल वापसी और चुनौतियां, आज रात 8:30 बजे।
Welcome back here with the news at 6. On to some sports now, and the rather sad news. The International Paralympic Committee today de-recognized Paralympic Committee of India over infighting within the body and the shoddy treatment that has been given to athletes in Ghaziabad during the National Para-Athletics Championships last month. In a letter written by the International Paralympic Committee on 15th April and sent by email to the PCI, the suspension is for an indefinite period of time. Now, this is the third time that India has been suspended by the PCI. The PCI is also facing the government's de-recognition after Sports Minister issued a show-cause notice to the association over mismanagement during events in Ghaziabad. Due to the world body suspension that comes with immediate effect, Indian athletes will not be able to participate in any international events till the ban is lifted. The World Blind Games are scheduled in Korea for next month.
I think this is something where, the para-athlete is being penalized for no fault of theirs. So we would appeal to the International Committee that they should find a via media under which, pending resolution of this internal problem of a federation, the para-athlete is able to participate.
Well, time now for all the sports news and sports beat. The Supreme Court has appointed CBI's SP Vivek Priyadarshini to probe the role of former IPL COO Sundar Raman in the spot fixing and betting scam. Priyadarshi will replace BB Mishra, who has retired. The Supreme Court bench also appointed a 3-member team under former Chief Justice of India, Rajendra Malhotra, to decide on the quantum of punishment to Gurunath Mayappan, Raj Kundra and IPL franchises Chennai Super Kings and Rajasthan Royals. Leander Pace and Daniel Nestor failed to go beyond the second round of the Monte Carlo Masters as the pair were bowed out following a close defeat against Benoit Paire and Stan Wawrinka. Seeded 6, Pace and Nestor lost 4-6, 6-7 in just 67 minutes to the French-Swiss wildcard pair. Pace had been struggling to making the final day of the Delray Beach, as this is the 4th tournament in a row where he has not been moved beyond the second round. Jurgen Klopp will leave Borussia Dortmund at the end of the season. Klopp, who announced his decision, remained determined to end his time at the club on a high despite a difficult campaign that has seen BVB in the relegation zone going into the winter break. He said that he is not on a farewell tour, but his hopes of finishing in the Europa League qualification places in the Bundesliga is being hindered by the loss of several players to injury. Well, that's all from Ask the Bank.